We can we'll start the lecture because it's still over. We have only two people, but that's fine. Uh, Let me just quickly. Okay, so today we'll go through fourth and fifth lecture of this unit number 6, that is mechanical spring. Let me share my screen with you. Okay, so unit number 6 we'll go through few things like this is fourth and fifth lecture, so we'll have one more lecture after this once we are done today. Okay, so basically, we have gone through some basics of the springs till now. In that, we have seen what are different types of springs are there, different ends of the spring applications, why spring is required, different materials for the spring. Then we have basic concepts like the nomenclature of the spring, free length, solid length. We have seen that ends of the spring, and then we started the work design and the stresses in the spring. So we have seen that mainly spring is undergoes under what kind of stress? Basically torsional stress. It will have two types of primary shear and shear because of the torsion, right? And the combination of both we will take as our this thing. So to consider all these and also the stress concentration factor, we'll use Wahl's factor. K is given by 4C minus 1 upon 4C minus 4 plus 0.615 upon C. Okay, this is spring index. Okay. Okay. So we have seen the Wahl's factor, then we have seen the deflection of the spring delta using the angular deflection formula. Delta is equal to 8 PD cube n upon GD raised to 4. Then we have seen that deflection is proportional to the load, and basically we use that principle for many applications. Then we started working on the design of a spring, and we know the formula for shear stress in a spring is K into 8 PD upon pi d cube, right? Where K is a Wahl's factor. Okay. Generally, shear stress we take zero point 0.3 of SUT to zero point 0.5 of SUT, depending on what you are using. So we have seen the process for the design of the spring. In that, we'll first see the shear, find out allowable shear stress, Wahl factor. Then we'll find out the diameter of the wire, diameter of the coil. Then we will find out number of coils, solid length, and then total gap, free length, and lastly we'll find out the rate of the spring, right? So also we'll at the end we'll check whether the guide is required or not. Okay. Then we took some example. Now today we'll go through more kind of what you can say advanced type of springs, basically series and parallel connections of spring. Okay, we'll go through that today. Okay. So now when the springs are like whatever applications we have seen till today, the springs are we are using the spring and we are using the deflection or the stiffness of the spring. That property we will use the like we know we applied some load to a spring, it will have a deflection, uniform deflection. But sometimes we need to have some kind of what you can say more advanced applications of a spring. So that time we can use the spring in parallel, like or spring in like series or spring in parallel. So this is a spring in parallel. So we have two springs, where the springs are in parallel to each other. So in this case, the load taken by both spring will be different, but the deflection will be same. This is spring in parallel. But if we apply like one string attached to at the end attach another spring, that becomes a spring in series. So that time the load is will be not same carried by the all the springs, but the deflection will be different, right? So we have to see like how to find out the stiffness in case of a parallel spring or series spring, right? So but why do we need that? So like sometimes it is required to to save the space, or we might need also sometime rate of change of spring at certain deflection means we need certain deflection will need certain rate of change, which is not we can achieve it using the regular spring, right? And obviously to provide a fail safe, like we are going to see next topic, concentric springs. That time it is fail safe means what happens is like if we put the springs in parallel, if the one spring fails, another spring comes into action, and it will be your application or system will not fail. It is a fail-safe system. Application is also there for the parallel connections. So there are many applications of series and parallel connection, but we have seen only few of them. So we'll see now, if we have two springs of, stiffness K1 and K2, like the spring rates K1 and K2, how we to find out the resultant stiffness. We'll see that in this today's topic of the conceptual, and then we'll take a numerical from the design perspective. Okay. Now, first let's consider a spring which is a series, spring in series. Okay. So there, if you see, you guys can hear me, right? Kunal and Prasad, you guys can hear me? Means I'm audible, right? Otherwise, what will
Yes,
happen?
sir.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So now two springs in series means what? One spring is attached. At the end, there is another spring is attached. So what happens in this case? If you see now this, if you see the diagram, was one spring one is having a different number of what you can say loops, or different number of coils, different stiffness. So it will be different for spring one, and it will be different for spring two. So if K1 is the stiffness or spring rate of spring one, and K2 is the stiffness of spring 2, then how to calculate the resultant stiffness? Now what happens in series case? We are assuming that the force acting on each spring is same and is equal to the external force. Means what? P, we are applying external force P. It may be a compressive force or tensile force. It can be any kind of force. But because these are in series, the force is uniformly transferred from one spring to the other end, right? So that's why P will be having equal and opposite reaction on the opposite side, right? So in the case of series spring, the force is uniform, or it is same, right? But the deflection of each spring will be different, and total deflection will be equal to deflection of spring 1 plus deflection of spring 2, right? So these are the two basic things. If you look at the diagram, you will easily can conclude about two things, that deflection of 1 plus deflection of 2, the combined will be deflection of the total spring system, and the force is uniform, is equal to the external force, right? So if we put these things in a formula, or in a formula, we're trying to formulate it, then we'll get deflection is equal to deflection of spring 1 plus deflection of spring 2, delta 1 upon delta 1 plus delta 2. Now what is delta? It is P upon K. Or what is stiffness? It is P upon load upon deflection, right? Stiffness. So deflection is equal to P upon K. So load upon stiffness. So deflection of spring 1 delta 1 is equal to P load is same upon K1, and deflection delta 2 is equal to P upon K2. So we can say that delta 1 is equal to P upon K1, delta 2 is equal to P2 upon K2, P upon K2, right? And then we know that the total deflection is equal to deflection 1 plus deflection 2. So we can say P upon K is equal to P upon K1 plus P upon K2. We can easily cancel P, and we'll get 1 upon K is equal to 1 upon K1 plus 1 upon K2 plus 1 upon K3. It goes up to the n number of springs. So if we have n number of springs, the ultimate resultant stiffness of the combination of the spring, if they are in series, is 1 upon K is equal to 1 upon Kn, K1 plus 1 upon K2 plus 1 upon Kn, right? Where K is a combined stiffness, and K1, K2 are the K1, K2, Kn are the stiffnesses of individual spring. So what we can conclude, say if there are only two springs, then we can say 1 upon K is equal to 1 upon K1 plus 1 upon K2, or K is equal to K1 K2 upon K1 plus K2, right? So this is the resultant stiffness in the case of when there are stiffness springs in series. Okay. So this is the case of the spring in series, that the resultant stiffness when stiffness is K1 K2 is K1 K2 upon K1 plus K2. Now we'll see now similarly what will be the resultant. So in exam you might be given the two to find out the like there are two springs which are in series to each other. So the problem, it looks complicated, but it is not. Simply we have to find the resultant stiffness using this formula. Okay. Now, what happens in the case of a spring if it is in parallel, right? So, if you take a close look at the diagram, okay, if the springs are in parallel, what happens? That time the deflection will be same. See, look at the diagram. it will be either compressed or it will be no, it will be extended or it will be elongated. So that time the deflection of both the springs is same, but the P is not same. So P is equal to P1 plus P2. So if load taken by spring 1 is P1 and load taken by spring 2 is P2, then P is equal to P1 plus P2, right? Means load, external load is equal to load taken by 1 plus load taken by 2 because they are in parallel. So P is equal to P1 plus P2, right? Also delta is same. Deflection is same for both springs, right? So delta is equal to P upon K. So load is equal to P, K into delta, right? Stiffness into deflection. So we can say deflection, like resultant deflection K into, I'm sorry, delta is equal to K1 delta plus K2 delta, right? Because P1 is equal to K1 delta, P2 is equal to K2 delta. So K1 delta plus K2 delta is equal to K delta. And since deflection is same, so we can cancel deflection. And the resultant stiffness of a springs in parallel is K is equal to K1 plus K2 plus Kn. That means what? When springs are in parallel, if n springs are in parallel, then the resultant stiffness of the combination is sum of all the stiffnesses. So if you have n springs or 3 springs, 4 springs, if you add the stiffnesses of all the springs, you will get the resultant stiffness if they are in parallel. Okay. So this is the combined stiffness of a springs which are in parallel. So what we can observe that deflections are additive in case of a series. If the springs are in series, deflection are we can add, but the force are we can add in case of a parallel. If the springs are in parallel, the force we can add, but if it is in series, the deflection we can add. Right? That is a general observation. Right? Right? So no, basically what we have seen is that if the springs are attached in series or in parallel, how to find out the resultant or the combined stiffness, right? In case of a spring in series, K is equal to K1, K2 upon K1 plus K2. In case of parallel, it is simply K1 plus K2 plus Kn. Okay. So should we go ahead and take a numerical? I just want to take one more numerical before we proceed of this design of a spring. But in this, it will be having some kind of what you can say advanced. We have to use some lever mechanism concepts also. So we'll take a look at this problem. Okay. Before that, let me just make these things white so that we can go step by step. So you guys are with me till now. We have seen like how to calculate the resultant stiffness in case of a parallel and series springs. Now we take a numerical. A safety wall operated by helical tension spring. So now we have given a system where this it is used. The spring is used for operating a safety valve. Safety valve means what? After certain pressure is reached, this system will open and it will allow the pressure to release. Now in the whatever container, whatever you are seeing, their pressure is getting generated, right? And after the pressure reaches certain point, this wall must be opened. Otherwise, what will happen? This thing will burst like a pressure cooker, right? Like if after, when the pressure reaches certain limit, your wall opens automatically depending on the weight, and it will release the pressure inside it so that it will not have kind of burst, right? So similarly, we have a safety wall which is operated by spring. Means spring is putting a force on it, it is keeping it closed. But if the pressure goes beyond certain limit, it will the spring will be have the action, and it will open the valve and the pressure will be released. Okay, this is how the safety valve will work. So we are using a helical tension spring. So here tension spring is used, which is helical through the lever mechanism as shown in the figure. So we have a figure, we have a lever. So if you see that one side of the lever on the left hand side, the length is 75, and this on the right hand side, the length is 150. So if we trying to find out the mechanical advantage, it is 150 upon 75. So it is advantage of 2. So on the right hand side, we will, the effort will be half of the whatever you are going to get the output on the left hand side. That is mechanical advantage of a lever. Okay, so diameter of the wall is 50 mm. So wall diameter, the diameter where the P is written of the wall is given as 50 millimeter, right? So that's where the your Now what does this mean? 50 millimeter diameter. That means area is pi by 4 d square. So that will be the area which is taking the pressure. So pressure into that area will be your force on the left hand on the wall. Are you getting my point? I will again repeat. We have given a diameter of the wall, this diameter, right, as 50 millimeter. That means what is the area of the wall? Pi by 4 d square, pi by 4 into 50 square. So we have area of the wall and pressure into area will give you the force. So if we know the pressure, we can multiply by this area to get the force on the wall. Okay. In normal operating condition, the wall is closed and the pressure inside the chamber is 0.5 Newton per mm square. So what they have given? They have given the pressure inside the wall as 0.5 in normal cases. Means what? Means when the wall is not open, when the pressure means it is inside pressure is when the wall is closed is zero point 0.5 Newton per mm square. So we know the pressure inside, there is pressure 0.5 into pi by 4 d square will be the force acting on the wall when it is closed. The wall is open when the pressure inside the chamber increases to 0.6. So means now we want the wall to be opened when the pressure goes up. It goes to 0.6 Newton per mm. So if the pressure is 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, the wall will remain open and the inside what the contents are there, they can go out and there will be no kind of accident will be avoided, right? And if again it comes down below 6.6, it will remain open. It comes to 0.59, it will close, and again the pressure will start build up. Okay, so this is how it will work. So the wall is open when the pressure inside that is zero point 0.6 Newton per mm square. So that time the force will be pi by 4 d square, pi by 4 into 50 square into 0.6. That will be the force to open the wall. Okay. The maximum lift of the wall is 5 mm. Means lift will be opened or the movement of the left hand side of the lever is 5 mm. It will be so. What will be the movement on the right hand side? It will be 10 mm. It see we have seen that at mechanical advantage twice. So if the left hand side end moves by 5 mm, the right hand side will move by 10 mm. The spring index is taken as 8. So we have given C as 8. The spring is made of a patented and cold drawn steel wire with the ultimate. So we have given SUT 1200 Newton per mm square and modulus of G is given 81,370 Newton per mm square. Okay. The permissible shear stress for the spring can be taken as 30% of ultimate strength. So that means the tau allowable is 0.3 of SUT. So 1200 into 0.3, that is 360 Newton per mm square is allowable shear stress. So we have given allowable shear stress tau as 360 Newton per mm square. So what we have given? We have given spring index 8 C. We have given G. We know as tau now is 360 Newton per mm square, and we know the dimensions of the wall and the pressure specifications of the wall basically. Basically, we know force in the wall, and we have to design the spring now. We have to calculate wire diameter, diameter of the spring wire, mean coil diameter. We have to find a small d, capital D, and number of active coil. That means we have to find out n. Okay, right? So what is given? We have given 3 or 4 things. We know. We know space C. We know SUT. So that way we know tau is equal to 360 Newton per mm square. We know G, and tau is equal to 0.3 of SUT. These things are we have given, right? So let's write it down. C is equal to 8, SUT 1200 Newton per mm square, G is 81,370 Newton per mm square, and tau is 0.3 of SUT, right? So with these other things, whatever are given, those are the specifications of the spring, right? So slowly we will find out now first diameter of the wire. Now to find the diameter of the wire, we need to find out the force on the left hand side. We need to find out the force on the in the spring, right? And then we can go ahead with the design of the spring. So let's first as a try to find out the forces in the spring. Now PV and PS, right? So PS means force in the spring. PV is load like force in the wall. Okay, so that is some kind of denotation. That's where how we will denote the forces in the spring. So now if we see the try to take a lever into like force into distance, they match, right? So force, if we just try to find balance the moments, right? Say if you take at the fulcrum of the pin, where the moment will be balanced, like the moment because of force in the wall and the moment because of force in the spring will be balanced. So load in the wall multiplied by 75 is equal to load in spring multiplied by 150. right? So PV into 75 is equal to PS into 150, or PS, spring force, is equal to half of PV. Means what? Because of the mechanical advantage, load in the spring is half of load in the wall, right? Now, how to find out the loads? PV load in the when the wall is closed, pi by 4, as I said, pi by 4 d square into zero point 0.5. This is the pressure. Pressure into area. Pressure is what? Newton per mm square, right? Area is mm square, so you will get Newton as the ultimate, right? So this is Newton per mm square. This is mm square, so you will get like Newton as the output, like that is the force. So pi by 4 d square into pressure is equal to your load in the wall when it is closed. So when it is closed, the load in the wall is 981.75. So that is the load in the wall when it is closed position. Now when the that time the load in the spring will be half of it, as I said, by using this formula, load in the spring is half of load in the wall. So when in the closed condition, the spring force in the spring is 981.75, half of that, that is 490.87 Newton. So load in the spring, when the spring is in a initial load in the spring when the wall is closed is 490.87. Now, when the wall will open, where the pressure reaches 0.6 Newton per mm square. So the pressure is now 0.6 Newton per mm square. That time, what is the force in the wall? It is pi by 4 d square into 0.6, right? Straightforward. So area into pi by 4 d square into 0.6. So the maximum, this is the minimum load when the wall is closed. This is the maximum load. After this, the wall will open and there cannot be any increase in the load. Contents will go out. So that is 1178. So again, half of that, as per this formula, load in the spring is half of that. So maximum, as a minimum load in the spring is 490.87, and maximum load in the spring is 589.05 Newton, right? And now for this is the minimum and maximum load, and for this load, the spring wall will be lifted by 5 mm. That is what they are saying, right? What they are saying, maximum lift of the wall is 5, means wall will move by 5 mm. That time spring will go double of its distance, right? That time spring will go 10 mm. So delta is deflection of the spring is 5 into 150 upon 75, right? Lever on the left side, lever on the right side upon lever on the distance on the left side. So 5 into that, so 10 mm. So when the wall goes up by 5 mm, the spring will come down by 10 mm. So deflection of the spring from minimum force. Minimum force is when the wall is closed. Maximum force when the wall is open. So for those two differential forces, the deflection of the spring is 10 mm. So we know now load in the spring, and we also know the deflection in the spring. So we can find out stiffness required of the spring. Are you getting my point? Okay, I will again repeat. We know initial load when the wall is closed. That time, okay, I heard some, okay. So when the initial pressure is 0.5 Newton per mm square multiplied by area will be initial load in the wall. Double of that will be initial load in the spring, and final load will be 0.6 into area. Double of that will be the final load. So we know what is the initial and final load in the spring. We also know the deflection of the spring 10 mm. So we can find out the stiffness of the spring. That is K is equal to 589 minus 5. 589 is maximum load, minimum load or initial load upon stiffness for this variation of the load is. So we'll get 982 Newton per mm. This is what stiffness of the spring required. Are you getting my point? So load upon deflection. Load is what? 589 minus 490 upon deflection is 10. So 982 Newton per mm. Deflection is, stiffness is what? Newton per. For each distance, what is the deflection of the spring? So we know now that the maximum the stiffness of the spring is 982. So for each mm, it will need a 982 Newton force. So for 1 mm, if load required is deflection of 1 mm, load required 982. For 10 mm deflection, load required is 9820 Newton. Okay, so we know now maximum force in the spring, minimum force, we have found out the stiffness. So now we will try to design. So we know now what is the required for the design of the spring. We need to know stiffness, we need to know load acting on it, when we can calculate the dimension. So let's design the spring. Now we know the shear stress is 0.3, as I know we discussed it when we read the problem. So tau allowable is 360 Newton per mm square. It is 0.3 of SUT. So allowable shear stress in the spring is 360 Newton per mm square. So wall factor K, now we will try to, this is basically, we are going to use this formula. Shear stress is equal to, this is we know, K into 8 PC upon pi d square. K is wall factor, P is load acting on the spring, C is stiffness of the, C is the spring index, and D is the diameter. So in this case, allowable shear stress is we know, P load acting on the maximum load acting on the spring we know spring index is given as 8, and we can find out D, right? So how, for that we need to know K wall factor. So K is equal to 4C minus 1 upon 4C minus 4 plus 0.615 upon C. So here C is given as 8. So 4 into 8 minus 1, 32 minus 1, 31 upon 32 minus 4, 28 plus 0.615 upon 8. So that will comes to 1.184. So wall factor in this case when the C is 8 is 1.184. So we just put the values, tau as 360, K is 1.184, right? 8 into P is the maximum load in the spring is 589.05 into C is 8. So with this we can calculate the diameter of the spring wire. So small d is the diameter of the spring wire. That is what this first question is, wire diameter. So we got the wire diameter as 6.28, or we will approximate it to 7 mm. So wire we will be needing in this case will be 7 mm. Now D is equal to, capital D is equal to C into D, right? So what is spring index? The mean coil diameter upon diameter of the wire, right? So D is equal to C into D. So 8 into 7, 56. So we know mean coil diameter is equal to 56 mm. The diameter of the wire is 7 mm. Now number of active coils. Now how we can find out number of active coils? Now we can use this formula. K is equal to GD raised to 4 upon 8 D cube N. Here K is stiffness. We know that stiffness is 9.82 actually. This is 982 Newton per mm, right? So K is equal to 81 into 81 G into D raised to 4, 81,370 to D we know that 7 mm wire diameter, and also we know diameter of the coil, mean coil diameter. So we can find out this formula, put the values, and we can find out number of coils. So put the values and we can get the number of coils as 15 coils. So in this case, number of coils required. So now see, if the ends are specified, we have to add, or 2 to that, because number of active and inactive. So these are number of active coils they have asked. If they have asked for total number of coils, then ends come into picture, and we'll add 2 if they are the grounded and the flat ends, right? But they haven't asked only, they have asked only the number of active coils. So number of active coils in the spring is basically 14.16, so 15 coils. So we will have a spring of 15 coils with mean coil diameter as 56 and wire diameter of 7 mm. Okay, so this is how we will design the spring. So in this case, the second part, design of the spring, was not complicated, but we need to know the lever mechanism. That's why I have taken this problem, because it has come in the exam couple of times. Okay, so you guys are okay with this now, like how to design advanced springs. If that is the case, then we can go ahead with the next topic, that is concentric spring. So I would like to finish the concentric springs conceptual part, and then also we'll take a numerical on that, like concentric, or how the concentric springs will, how we will use them. And then the last topic will be surge in the spring. Okay, that also we have multi-leaf spring. There we have few topics like multi-leaf spring and torsion spring. These are the topics which are left. So we would like to finish today. I think let me just quickly see what we are about to, because only two topic will remain. So today we'll finish now concentric and surge in the spring. So concentric springs and surge in the spring will be the next topic. But since we have few more minutes left, so I will go ahead with design of the torsions, design of the concentric springs. Okay, because we have to finish the concentric springs as well as surge in the springs. What is surge in the springs? We have to work on that also today. Okay. Okay, so I will take start with the and then we'll take a few minutes break. I will start with the concentric. Now, concentric springs is basically, if you see, these are the springs in series actually. If you see, they are one inside, a small spring will be inserted inside the other large spring, and this will be the center of the both springs will match. That's why they are called as concentric spring, right? So these are the helical compression springs, obviously, and they will be having centers matching to each other. And most importantly, they will have different kind of helix, like a helix will be opposite to each other. Now, why that is required? If the helix are in the same, so like if you see the diagram, helix of one is, and others is opposite. So helix of this, both springs are in opposite direction, right? This spring is also called as nested springs, right? And like sometimes like there are three springs also, like middle, inner, and outer spring. Like so, if we put one more spring out, beyond this, or a small spring inside it, it will become a three spring in concentric fashion, right? So one is right hand helix, one is so if you see the diagram, one is right hand helix, one is left hand helix. Now why we will be using opposite hands? Because we do not want springs to lock. Lock means what? If we use the like both right and right-handed spring, what happens? The spring might go inside the gap, and the springs will be, it will be touching to each other, and there will not be gap, and the spring will not work, as expected. Are you getting my point? Okay, I will repeat again. The angle of the springs, we have opposite angles, like one, if one is right-handed helix, then other will be left-handed helix. If there are three springs, one will be left, then outside will be right, and again outside will be left, right, left, or right, left, right. Why this we do this? Because if you see closely, if the smaller spring is having same helix, right, both of them are right or both of them are left, then this smaller spring might go inside the gap, right? It might go inside the gap, and because of that happens, when the load comes, they will touch each other, and there will not be gap, and the spring will not work what it is supposed to do. Okay, so that is called as something called as locking of the spring. So that's why, generally, to avoid the locking of the coils, we will use opposite helix, right, for the concentric spring. Now, why concentric springs are required? Because sometimes we would like to increase, the space is limited, we have a certain space, but we would like to carry much more higher load. That time we will use two springs, so that one spring, the combination of, we have seen, right, in case of series, what is the we have seen that if the springs are in series, the stiffness is equal to sum of all the stiffnesses, right? K1 plus K2. So if we have two stiffnesses, then combination of the sum of those will be the resultant stiffness, right? So we have more stiffness with the less space. That's why this that's why the spring is used. Also, this is used when we want fail safe. As I said, parallel springs are fail safe. Why? Because if one spring fails, it breaks. Other spring can take some load, right? And the system will not fail. So this type of spring is fail safe. And importantly, it's with this concentric springs, something called as surge. We'll talk about it in next lecture. That surge is eliminated because of this concentration. The springs are concentric. Surge is not there, right? Surge means sudden increase in the what you can say, vibration of the spring, right? So we'll talk about it. But these type of springs are used when there is we have very high load, like diesel engines and aircraft engines, railroads. So if you see the railroad suspension, below wagon of the malgadi, there will be this type of springs, like one inside the other. So it will be having a fail safe as well. It can take much more higher load, right? So, and sometimes we need to have, kind of, what happens, sometimes we need to have a spring which is, the stiffness is not uniform. If we see this spring, the stiffness is uniform because length are exactly equal, right? So that time what happens, the load applied, if the load is applied on the spring, the load will be taken uniformly. But sometimes we want initially to take some load, and then we want stiffness to increase, right, as the load goes up. So that time we will use a different length of the spring. Okay. Now, as I will repeat this part, last part again. If we use concentric springs, right, but the lengths are same. That time what happens, when we start applying the load, the stiffness is uniform. So K is equal to K1 plus K2, right? But sometimes we need applications where we want two types of stiffness. So some stiffness, some uniform deflection for initial load, and then after certain load that we want to have a different deflection. So that time what we'll do, we'll use different types of lengths. So if we reduce the length of the inside spring, what happens? So try to imagine there are these two springs are there. Outside spring length is more. inside spring is length is less. Okay, so that time what will happen? So if the length of the inside spring is less, then initial load will be taken only by the outside spring, and when the deflection is such a way that lengths are equal, that time the load will be taken by both the springs. Are you following what I'm saying? Now, when we have concentric springs of different length, then when we apply load, the load will be taken only by the one spring having more length until the deflection is such a way that both length of the both springs are same, and then the load will be taken by the combination k is equal to k1 plus k2, right? It will be taken by combination of both springs, right? So that's how we will, sometimes we need to have what you can say, uh, we do not want the spring force directly proportional to the deflection, right? That time we use for this variation of the force and deflection ratio, that time we use this type of spring. Okay, now see, this is the diagram what I was talking. So outside spring diameter, outside spring length is more, L1 less than L2. So what happens in this case? When we apply force, the spring will start deflection. So only load taken, like load will be taken only by the outside spring in first case until it is deflected by what distance? L1 minus L2. This distance between here and here. So L1 minus L2, until that deflection, it is only taken by outside spring, right? So delta is equal to P upon K, or K is equal to P upon delta, right? So now when the load or the deflection of the outside spring is L1 minus L2, that time now both springs will have length of L2, and now the deflection will be K, stiffness is equal to K is equal to K1 plus K2, and accordingly deflection deflection will vary. So what happens if we take only outside spring? The deflection is AB as per this diagram, right? The what you can say, stiffness is AB, deflection upon force. The ratio is deflection upon force, right? Force upon deflection. So AB will be the stiffness of the spring. If there is only inside spring, forget about there is no outside spring. So that time CD will be what you can say, force upon deflection. So when force is zero, deflection is zero, and as the force goes, the deflection will go up. So CD will be the deflection. So if we now what happens, in the series, if the springs are in series, not springs are in concentric, but they are in different lengths. So until the length is goes from L1 to L2, that time only AG, that is only stiffness of the outside spring going to come into picture, and from G to H, it is combination of inside and out stiffness of is K1 plus K2. So stiffness will be now GH instead of GB. Okay. Are you following what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to say is, when the springs are concentric but having different length, the stiffness will vary from A to G, it will be uniform, and from G to H it will be uniform, but the slope of the deflection will be different. So the stiffness will be different. So this type of spring will have a one stiffness for until the lengths are same for both springs, and then another stiffness when the length are same. Right? So force deflection characteristics AB, as I said, AB is for the longer spring, CD is for the shorter spring, and AGH for the combination. Right? So AB is for longer, CD for shorter, and we will combine CD from G to AB, then we'll get combination as AGH. Okay. So now AGH is not a straight line. So it will be basically, it will having a two slope line. So this is how we will calculate the deflection of the combination of the what you can say, concentric spring with the different types of lengths. So now we'll try to see a design of a concentric spring, and then we'll take a numerical on that. Okay. So you guys want to take a break because it is not giving me, it is not asking me to stop. Okay. But anyway, I will stop and we will take a small break, a 5-minute break only. Okay. And then guys, please join again. Okay. So I'll take a 5-minute break. Then we'll start with the design of a concentric spring, and then we'll take a numerical on concentric spring, and then we'll take surge in springs. Okay. So we'll do that. But for that, we will stop here for 5 minutes. So I will again join at 12:50. Okay. You guys are okay with that? You guys are there? Kunal, Mangesh, and
Yes, sir.
Sardar. So I
Yes, sir.
will,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
taking a break of 5 minutes, and then because it will ask me to now to my application. So I will stopping. I'm stopping right now, and we'll join at exactly 12:50. So it will, in a half an hour we'll finish that, and then we'll have only one lecture limit to close the syllabus. Okay. So join after 5 minutes at 12:50.